Well, I'm delighted, Professor Fwatshak, that you've joined us today. It's been a while since we've seen you, but you're so welcome. So from Jos, sorry, I'm saying Jos in Nigeria. Am I getting this right?
Oh, sure.
Yes, it's Jos. From Jos in Nigeria, from the university there. I know you've been working on a really exciting project. So just tell me a bit about it, will you?
About the project?
Yeah, about the project. How's it been going?
Well, I must say it's been going on fine, but not exactly the way we wanted it to be, because when we applied, we had a schedule, a timetable of activities. We did very well in 2022, but 2023, we're not doing so well, partly because the first tranche of the funding was released in December 2021, and so we got working in 2022. Incidentally, 2022 was ruined academically in Nigeria and public universities with strikes. For 8 months, from February until October, we were on strike. And all of us involved in the project are in public universities, because some of us are in Jos and some are in the provincial, or what we call state universities in Nigeria. So all of us were denied our pay for 8 months, and so it became very tough. Everyone was struggling, and we struggled with it. But as a team, we agreed that since we had been awarded, and in a very long time, historians have never won that National Research Fund Award. So we said we will do the project for the honor. And we really planned it in a manner that we are going to be fairly compensated in a little way based on the kinds of projects I have been involved in, that every member is given a particular stipend at the end of the month for participating. But the government team abolished that. So we were left struggling when this salary stoppage came. But we struggled and actually went to the field and gathered the data. So we held interviews across 17 local governments, about 56 ethnic groups. We conducted interviews on them in their histories, particularly origins, their political cultures, their economic cultures, their social cultures, their religious cultures, their encounters with colonialism, their encounters with Islam, their encounters with new communities, their encounter with modernity, and their experiences after independence up to the last government that its tenure ended in 2023. So
Can I just stop you for one moment? I do apologize.
Okay.
I'm just going to stop my video and I'm going to quickly plug in my computer or it'll go to sleep. Hang on one minute, will you? I'm so sorry.
Okay, it happens.
Right. Do you want to carry on then till 2023?
Yeah. So we gathered data from the field, from the communities up to 2023. And then some of our team members also visited the 3 archives in Nigeria. We have an archive in Ibadan for Southwest Nigeria. We have an archive in Enugu for Southeast Nigeria. And then we have an archive in Kaduna for Northern Nigeria. So all these archives were visited and photocopies of documents related to the ethnic communities were made. And then we bought books and other materials published on the ethnic communities. And so once we gathered these, the next stage was we now sat down and said, okay, we needed to do a reporting template based on the curriculum of the 9-year basic education. So our colleagues in education designed the reporting template. We all sat down, reviewed it, we corrected it and said, no, we can't write it as a textbook. We'll write it as a history book. And then the teachers will have to do a teacher's guide and extract from that book what is relevant for what they want to teach. Otherwise, it will look like a very disorganized book. So in the process of putting the reports together, I'm now struggling with my own. I'm reporting on 6 ethnic groups. I'm struggling to finish one now, and which I'm very conversant with. And when I started putting the reports together, the thing was not adding up as a historical document, because for each of the ethnic groups that we want to report, we have to give a state report and a local government report. So as a team, again, we came back and said, no, this template is not working. What we want to do is, for every local government that is multi-ethnic like mine, there are 6 or 7 languages spoken in my own local government, so different ethnic groups. So we'll have to have a mega data for the local government that talks about all. Then we have to separate it from the specific data that deals with the specific ethnic groups. So this is where we are. And I've been asking my colleagues, submit your reports to me, because I have to compile, put in one folder, and then show to the committee. But the documents we have gathered so far, the interviews we have conducted so far, are so enormous that we're planning to have a number of documents come out of it. One, we will transcribe the interviews and keep them as raw materials for future researchers. So we want to go back to the Jos Oral History and Literature text series, where oral collections were made and published into series. So anyone can pick them and do whatever they want with it, but we want to keep the transcripts as a separate document. Then we will do a general history of Plateau State. This is what we want to do. And then we will do another one for the universal basic education. And then a 4th one, I have applied for a conference in South Africa that members of my team will present aspects of their research results if the proposal goes through. So in November, we're going to present aspects of our research results. But I now ask everyone, just choose 1 or 2 ethnic groups, choose a particular theme that is of interest to you, and then we can do that. So this is where we are, and we hope to have a report showing how far we have gone and what we're doing so far for the project. I believe they'll be impressed. And since November last year, when we exhausted the fund to gather field data, they have not released the 2nd tranche, and they're saying that it's after the visit that if they are satisfied with our performance, the 2nd tranche will be released. So that's what we're hoping for, and we're very, very confident that we will make it.
Well, I'm certainly confident, because it sounds fantastic, and it's such an interesting model, going to these different ethnic communities all around Plateau State, and really in looking at how things are and how things have been. In summary, this will help others who want to understand more about how things have been over the years in Africa, to have this snapshot almost of your state. Just incredible, because it's difficult. Perhaps
quite difficult, because really we underestimated the quantum of work involved, and it becomes more difficult, because the kind of book we want to write must be so simple that primary school teachers will read and understand. But we're all university people. Most of us are professors. So stepping down the language to that ordinary level, that's why it's taking time for us. Otherwise, if we were writing academic papers, by now most of us would have been done. But we're trying to write in a language that people with diploma, as we call it in Nigeria, people with national certificate, people that don't have degrees, but their qualification can allow them to teach at primary school or junior school. And people just have just first degrees that can teach at that level. So we stepping down the language has been the biggest challenge that I, as a person, have been going through. And it takes a lot of time to change certain words, change certain expressions to make them simplified. And this is what part of what I'm going to explain to the committee. If they say we're very slow in writing the book, but it's if I was to write in for undergraduates, if I was to write for university people, I think I would have finished 3 or 4 ethnic groups by now.
I think that's really interesting because it isn't just the primary school teachers that have got to take this on board, but if you can have a wider, much wider audience.
Yeah.
Although perhaps it sounds patronizing to say that it needs to be presented fairly simply, I think it's important to value simplified information, because when people are, if you're academically trained, and particularly an academic historian, then you can probably take in loads and loads of complex information. But for somebody, say, like me, who's just a community researcher, somebody with an interest, yes, I'm capable of reading, but I can't tell you how many books I've got on the shelf that are still pristine and unread. Because if it's too complex, can't take in that amount of information. And if it's a new field that you've never really known much about, you really need some really, a clear picture of what the area is about, and then, the stories that are told. I think that sounds absolutely fascinating. So, because I'm the way I think, things that come out of my mouth sometimes haven't been processed in my brain or consulted with anybody else, but it would be brilliant to have a conference. And we've got Bunmi joining us from Canada at the moment. Welcome, Bunmi. With also her interest in Nigeria and publishing, and Roland's joined us as well. It would be great to do a conference when you and your colleagues on Zoom, we could do it, and you can present the information, and we can invite academics from our UK universities to join us. But it will be recorded. I don't think Simon's with us, and he does the recording. That would be incredible if you felt that was appropriate. Because I think
that's quite appropriate, but then it will require the academic level writing,
yes,
which is what we're preparing for the South Africa conference. So right now I cannot think of a very fast or quick date, because like I said, all of us are struggling to do the one for the conference. Is actually not it is part of the TED Fund stuff, but what we want to achieve with it is a peer review process that at the end of it we can receive feedback and then find academic journals to publish them in, reputable journals to publish them in. So that's the academic version. And I think that conversation can continue, and we will look forward to making such a presentation to this distinguished audience of Africanists.
Yeah, maybe the fact that this is a conversation, this could be a conference of conversations, then, I mean, when people are just explaining to another person that doesn't know anything about the research, like you've just done, I really put you on the spot there, but you were able to simplify it enough? You were able to put it in context, simplify it enough, clarify that that I was understanding. So if we did it in a sort of a conversation interview way, it wouldn't mean that your colleagues would have to present, hefty academic papers. It would be sharing, because why we're particularly interested, I think, is that this is academics doing community research.
Yeah, sure.
Community research is one of the things that underpins Black History Conversations. We're very happy for academic colleagues to come and share their academic research. But we're equally delighted when it's people from a local community telling us about what they've done to find out about the shared history in their local community. That's what makes your project so precious to us. So it would be lovely. And if we did it as a sort of I don't know, what time is it in Nigeria at the moment?
Yeah, it's 3 p.m.
3 p.m. Yeah. So it's the same time as Britain. If we did it as a sort of I don't know, a 2 till 5 even. I think people are so much more used to Zoom now that they can, to begin with, an hour and a half was too much. But now we're all and that could work really, really well, I think. Anyway, suggest to your colleagues and say, these folks in the UK are really interested, but we're really interested as well to know. And Bunmi, if you want to come in at some stage, please do.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Bunmi, how are you?
I'm so sorry I came in late. How are you?
How is Canada?
Oh, well, Canada is fine. I am so excited by this. Although I came in not too long ago, so I just caught the tail end of your talk. I am really, really excited to hear about your project. It sounds like it's something that could actually, I don't know if there are other states in Nigeria doing the same thing, but it sounds like it's something that could be a model for other states. Other states to use. And I'm just really very excited about it, the sound of it. Incidentally, about 2 years ago, so I mean, the publisher of Kachifo books, his name is Mukhtar Bakari, reached out to me because he was he's been apparently he'd been watching my channel, and he was thinking of doing coming up with a history of Nigeria for schools. And he wanted me to, kind of coordinate, probably because he kind of envisaged some of the challenges you're facing. Because my presentations on my channel, you see, I'm not addressing academics. And so he was under the impression that I could kind of, anchor the compilation of Nigeria's history, that they could now, he could now, that his organization could then now look at a way to get NECO and so, and the UBEB, the university, to adopt. But I had too much on my hands, and I couldn't, and I had to turn that down. It might be someone you're interested in maybe having conversations with somewhere along the lines of what you're doing. Incidentally, my mom's older brother was Nigeria's first director of National Archives. He set up the National Archives in UI. My maternal uncle. So I'm really excited at all levels. And then a suggestion I have, when you were talking about, this difficulty of, you guys being academics and wanting to write, kind of water down the language so that it is really very, very important. It has to be, for it to have the kind of reach, and be accessible enough for teachers at the primary school levels, at the junior secondary school levels, to be able to use to teach history. It has to be done in a language that is accessible to them. And my suggestion there would be, the work you're doing is such that is so crucial. Yes, we need to water it down, but the academic rigor should be the basis of it. So is it possible for you to, I didn't get the name of the people who were funding you, but is it possible for you to even let them know now that at the end of this, your project, you're probably going to need funding to work with people who will take the scholastic work, the academic papers that you come up with, and then break them down, into things that will be accessible at the level that we need it to be. And there are people who already specialize in producing educational books for that level of education. So that might be another round of funding that you're going to be needing to be able to get it into the hands of the people that we need it to be in. But honestly, I just pray it's something that other states are actually thinking about doing, or would use yours as a model, because we do need it. Well done.
Thank you, Bumi. Can I say a few responses?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for these very important comments that are highly complimentary, and I feel very honored to be described, for the project to be described in those very, very important words. Whether the project is being replicated across Nigeria, for the moment, no. But my colleagues who asked for the template for the proposal, I've shared it with them. And they have also been applying to TED Fund. None has come through yet. I don't know why. Because the way we did the proposal was such that each state needed this kind of research, because what made the research get the award was the fact that it was going to generate local history from the people.
Yeah.
And in Nigeria's context, every state has some complications of ethnic diversity, except for a few. So for those states that have ethnic diversity and they're in the majority, it's important for this kind of research to be carried out, because local history cannot be replicated. It just has to be taught only at that level, particularly for primary school children. You can't teach them people of Bauchi in Plateau State at that level. You have to teach them people of their own level. You have to teach them their origins. You have to teach them their cultures. And this is what this project is about. So all my colleagues that have asked for the model, I've shared it with them. And I do hope that the TED Fund people see the need to approve for those people to win, so that they can conduct the research in their places. Because history is highly contextual, and you cannot take one model from one state to another. There may be commonalities, but there are also differences which only local history can address. I will also need the address of the person you spoke about who is interested in publishing local history, the person that contacted you.
I will. Mukhtar Bakari. He's the publisher of Kachifo books.
Okay.
Kachifo is one of the major privately owned publishing companies in Nigeria.
Says Mukhtar who?
Mukhtar Bakari. Bakare. But I can I can send you his email and a contact so that you can reach out to him. But what I was talking about your research being replicated, I was thinking more about the methodology rather than because what you are doing is evolving a method of doing community research. So it's a model Yes, that can be replicated. They might need to tweak, but I think it will be a model that will be solid enough to be replicated. It's a really fantastic work you're doing.
That was how we originally planned it, and we do hope that colleagues can take up the challenge, and that the TED Fund people will see the merit in its replicability.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And then talking about the language, it's quite from inception, we knew that we're going to be writing for people who are not academics, but people who just want to learn local history, teachers of local, at very junior levels, primary levels and junior secondary school level. But for us as people who are professors, senior lecturers, and associate professors,
I know.
toning down the language is a challenge, but we have agreed that we need to do that. And I'm still waiting for...
and there's this organization that's also on the ground in Nigeria as well that you might want to reach out to. It's called Teach for Nigeria.
What for Nigeria?
Teach for Nigeria.
Okay, Teach for Nigeria. Okay.
Yes, I don't know if they would have the kind of resources to, because what they do is is to get young graduates to volunteer. I think maybe a year or two to go and teach in public schools.
Okay.
So they might and they might have the resources for you to be able to work with some of the younger teachers and so on to to kind of water down whatever. Unfortunately I don't know the person who is running it. Before the organization actually came to Nigeria, it started out as Teach for America. About 20 years ago, I actually reached out to America to invite them to Nigeria, to come and work in Nigeria. But somehow or the other, they were not able to start at that time. And when they were eventually ready, I wasn't involved. But I know they're very active in Nigeria and they have some resources, that you might be able to. So you might want to look them up to see, because honestly, I'm very excited by what you're doing. And I can't see how they shouldn't be excited about it as well.
I hope so. I hope so. And thank you again. Now, with respect to maybe extending the project for the academic community, the TED Fund funding, like typical of other funders, they don't extend the grant. So you just complete the project and work within the specification of what you want to do. But we had, in our proposal, indicated that part of this research was going to be academic. And this is why we applied to the conference in South Africa to present the academic component. At that level, we will be writing as university professors, engaging in debates, engaging the literature, and also philosophizing. So definitely this project has two components, and hopefully God on our side will be able to deliver on the two. But like I said, the toughest one is writing for the junior level because of this language, this thing. But for the senior, for the academic community, we are already used to that.
It's only tough for you because it's what you're used to. But honestly, there are people who that's all they, who would not find it difficult to do at all, because that's what they've been doing.
Yeah. But then whether we can find people who can tone down academic language to local for generally use, because we didn't build a budget for that kind of thing. This is the problem.
Why I think you should reach out to people like Teach for Nigeria, and then this publishing company, even maybe the four foundations in Nigeria and so on. I really think you it deserves to be the project that deserves to be funded.
Yeah, I'm taking down notes from what you are saying, your suggestions, and see if I can look them up and see if we can extend this and say, we have this project. We are all university professors. We need to bring the language down to the ordinary person, can can you help us in that process? So thank you very much for me.
Start with talking to Mukhtar Bakari. He is on the ground there in Nigeria.
Okay.
He might know other sources of funding, but I know it's a project he was interested in doing for Nigeria. So to hear that somebody is actually doing something for Plateau State, it's a start. It's a really good start. So I'm hoping you'll be able to get him interested in at least using his network or whatever it is. Because
I am most grateful.
Out of the blue, you know, yeah.
I'm very grateful and quite delighted that I was able to make it today.
Me too. Me too.
People here. This is just amazing, and I'm so glad I started. We started the recording early, Bunmi. You were late.
Okay.
But, as I hadn't specifically set, a particular speaker today, we're all overwhelmed, I think, in the UK, those of us in Black history, doing Windrush things at the moment. It's just been so about the time 75 years ago when people from the Caribbean and other countries started coming into Britain, and the big contribution they've made and everything else. So it's been really interesting to doing that, but exhausting. So I think I know several of my colleagues are giving talks and making presentations today because things are still going on. So it's just brilliant, Professor Sati, that you were able to record an explanation about this exceptional, and I'm going to summarize here, exceptional community research project into the communities and the ethnic groups in Plateau State, Nigeria. Is that a correct description? I can't hear you.
Oh, it's muted.
Yeah. Sorry, I temporarily muted myself. That's a very, very perfect description. That's what it is about, because the subtitle is, the title of the work, the main title is History from Below. Yeah, that's the main title of the work, History from Below. And we took this from the French School of Annals that say, when you're writing history, it has to have the voice of the people. So it's more like public history in the sense that for what we're doing for the TED Fund, we want to write the kind of history that is highly consensual. This is what the community says. This is what people say is their history. So it's going to be completely different from the debative, the analytical framework that we're going to put into the academic discourse. Because like from what I have gathered, people say we came from this particular place, we came from this particular place. But for me as a historian, I know that some of those stories don't add up because they belong to what we call the Hamitic hypothesis. For somebody, for it to tell me that they came from Egypt, they came from Yemen, just like the Oduduwa story, just like the Bayajida story. But this is what the people say, and you have to put it for them at their own level. But for the academic content, we'll have to say, no, this is not correct. This is a Hamitic hypothesis.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And I think it's so replicable in many ways, and this model that you've worked so hard to develop, is something that I'm sure will be of great interest. In the UK, one of the things that's happening now, and I was talking to some historians in Lancaster just half an hour ago on a phone call, because I'm interested in finding more about that area of the UK. And in the area, there's a group that's looking at local shared history in the Black history field. There are academics involved as well. And I think it's so important that each area tells its own story. Perhaps that's a bit different from interviewing people to find out how individuals tell their story. But that's another part of it. It just depends what works in which communities and how people want to approach it. But I think if we don't get to this level of connection with people to find out what they think their history is.
Yeah. Can you give me 5 minutes, a moment?
Yes, of course.
I'll join you soon. Sorry, thanks.
No problem.
Uh,
You just leave the video there. So, Bunmi, that was absolutely fascinating, wasn't it? So good that you joined us.
I'm happy I joined too.
Yes. Are you thinking
I
now?
wasn't even sure if there was going to be a surge. I didn't know whether you had wrapped up for the summer or something. So I just said, let me.
Well, we just said we keep on going. I'm sitting in my friend's house and she's moving out on Monday. So,
Oh,
so that it's a bit chaotic here, is to put it mildly. But anyway, we're here. Still got the Wi-Fi. That's fine. So, Roland, how are you doing at the moment? Roland sometimes listens in to what we're saying. Roland,
oh yeah.
Roland Huslin from Justice for Windrush Generations. Yeah. I'm a bit loath to stop the video there on Professor Fwatshak, because if I do, it's sometimes difficult to switch back on again. Anyway, okay. So just a little catch up then, Bunmi. So how have the last few weeks been with you? What are your activities at the moment?
I got some writing grants. Did I tell you that I got the Ontario Arts Council grants as well as the Canada Arts Council grants to complete my novel that I sent you the manuscript to read.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's mostly what I've been focusing on doing. Yeah. And then I interviewed a few people that I met through here. I interviewed Annie Domingo on her book, Eleanor Shearer. I also interviewed Juanita Cox on her research. So those are, yeah.
I don't know if there's many Canadians who came over to Britain in the time of after the Second World War.
The Windrush generations,
whether there's anybody who had any difficulty settling in Britain or getting sent back.
I know I actually tried to interview Roland as well, but we're not sure we're going to be able to use it because he wasn't able to. The location he was in was noisy, but yeah.
It would be better to interview Garrick Craig because he can do much better with the technology than Roland. Roland's always got.
It wasn't so much the technology; it was his location that made the recording so difficult. But I've still sent it off to my editor to see if we can make anything out of it, and I should know during the next week if they've been able to couple anything together from me. Yeah,
wonderful. So I haven't been checking lately. Have you still got the Sankover sessions going?
Oh yeah, all these people that I said I interviewed them for the channel.
Oh, good.
Yeah, all of them, I interviewed them for the channel. I interviewed Eleanor on her book, River Sing Me Home.
Oh, yeah.
And Domingo on her novel, Breaking the Mafia Chain. And then Juanita Cox on her research on the Windrush generation. So, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's all helps. So that's the Sankover Pan-African channel.
Yes, Sankover Pan-African series, yes. I think Sati is back now.
Okay, Sati, are you there again?
Oh, just now.
Yeah, I'm back, but I'm having lunch as well, so I don't want my nose to interfere.
Lunch. You have your lunch. That's what.
Yeah, late lunch.
Late lunch. We started this off, Black History Conversations. We started off at 12 o'clock, and it was called Black History Lunchtime Conversations. And people, please do switch your camera off if you want to, so you can enjoy your lunch. But it's really been fascinating to talk and to share today. So maybe what I'll tell you about now is something I've been doing. So please feel free to switch your camera off if you want.
Okay.
Okay. And just to say, I contacted people in Lancaster now. So this is a bit of a personal story about me and my family. So I discovered first of all that Lancaster, which is very close to Liverpool, it's just literally, I don't know, maybe 30 miles north of Liverpool, so very much on that west coast of England. And so it was easy for the traders in Liverpool to access resources from Scotland, from the north of England, and to be able to set themselves up in the trade, part of the transatlantic trade. So that's Lancaster. So the slave trade ports, the main ports in the UK were London, Bristol. Then Bristol was overtaken by Liverpool. And at some stage, Lancaster came in, and it was the fourth busiest active slave trade ports. So what happened in these ports was that the ships were all laden with goods that could be traded in West Africa, or goods that were needed in the Caribbean by the plantation owners and the people working out there. So this was the three-way trade we're talking about. Glasgow came in sometime later, but Glasgow was just doing the two ways from Scotland, from Glasgow, and going straight over to either the States or to the Caribbean and straight back again, not visiting the African coast to procure and traffic human beings to work on the other side of the Atlantic. So the ports I'm talking about are the slave trade ports. Okay, so discovered that Lancaster was really a major player in the field. Then I discovered that my family, well, I knew that I had family that came from the Lancaster area. And here the story gets really interesting and personal. In my personal family, we've got certain things that used to belong to Granny, or used to belong to Granny's mother, or used to belong to Granny's grandmother, things that have been passed down in the family. And I grew up in a family where we just took it for granted that Granny had a silver biscuit barrel on the side in the living room. That when the table was set for a meal, we had silver cutlery and we had silver serviette rings. I always remember that, and white damask cloth serviette rings. So we also always had a lot of cut glass. And when I was sorting my stuff out recently, I found tucked away in the back of a store that I'd carefully wrapped up tumblers and left them for whatever use we were going to make them with them in the future. But there's a set of 12 cut glass tumblers. Over in Australia, I've got matching sets. I shipped it out with all my stuff out there. I've got matching sets of wine glasses, port glasses, champagne glasses. What kind of a family had these kinds of things? And I never really gave it any thought because it was just stuff that had been handed down in the family. So when I came back over this time, I thought I would have a word with my cousin in Leicester. And I said to her, I've been wondering, Sue, about the stuff we've got. I said, what stuff have you got that was Granny's? Well, she opened a cupboard. Out came the silver tea service. Out came the china. Out came this, that and the other. I mean, she'd even got some really interesting and quite humble things, like my grandmother's hand-stitched undergarments, and maybe
Oh.
they were my grandmother's, or maybe they were even her mother's. Who knows when things like this are passed down in the family. So we've decided that we're going to research some more about this. So I was on the phone today to somebody who's a historian interested in Lancaster, and sure enough, they've got a Black History collection, a group there. So I'll be able to look at the slavery side and the connections there with Black history. But when I look at my family side, there is just one thing I remember my grandmother saying that stuck with me all my life. So this is like 70 odd years. My grandmother used to talk about the fact that sometimes they went to see her grandfather, and he was called, and she called him this, Lord John of Scale Hall. Now the family name was Woodhouse, and there's no Lord John Woodhouse. The title didn't exist. We think it might have been like a family joke, because he lived in a hall called Scale Hall.
Oh.
Now, Scale Hall is a massive property. You know, the sort of house, when you look at the front of it, it's got 5 bedroom windows going across, and it's got 3 on each side of the front door. Oh, no, 2 on each side of the front door, that kind of size of house. And Scale Hall overlooks basically the docks in Lancaster. Right, so the penny drops here. He must have been really affluent, and that must have been involved either in supplying something, we know not what, in Greece, but we know a little bit later, but then also in receiving the incoming goods and trading those goods on. So it'll be really interesting. Apparently the name Woodhouse is extremely common in Lancaster, the Lancaster area. Now, what's interesting as well is that it's quite a common name, I understand, in Canada. And a lady called Loretta, and I've forgotten her other name, she's been doing family history research, and she discovered that into this Woodhouse family, because she's called Woodhouse, and she's visited this Scale Hall and taken pictures and different things of it. So, and we've been able to help with a bit of the family. But then there's a twist, another twist to this story, and that is that another branch of the family were called Hamlet, and George Hamlet lived in Cheshire, in I think it was Wisterson, can't remember now. And he was a salt merchant, a big salt producer. Now, salt in Cheshire can be got out of the ground in various different ways. It's not like salt from the sea, it's like in the ground. So they've got big salt mines still nowadays, big salt mines, and they also used to be able to get the salt somehow off the surface, and I'm learning all about this, and they would pump the salt out somehow, don't ask me how, and then it would evaporate, and then they could do what they wanted. When I spoke to my cousin about it, she said, oh yes, Edwin Hamlet, who was somebody on her side of the family, was a trader in Liverpool. Well, we all know what Liverpool used to trade for. And when you look it up, there's special salt. So this is coming back to you, Professor Sati, to see if you can have any colleagues who know anything about the import of salt to Nigeria, because there was even a salt called Lagos salt, and there was black salt as well. Now, whether it was black because it was coming to Africa, or whether it was black because that's the colour it came out of the ground, I don't know.
It could have been black because it was, salt fish for slaves.
Yes, yes.
It might have been. Could it have had that connection as being exported to the Caribbean you know, to make salt fish for the enslaved people.
Yeah. So there's obviously very clear links. Now that to me fascinates me, that here's me being looking at Black history and looking at families that were involved as plantation owners, and then all of a sudden realizing that it can be anybody, because everybody in the UK at that time must have had something, some way, where their area was producing, like Mid Wales was producing cloth for the slave trade, that maybe they were receiving goods. I also, while I've been here, went to visit in Worcestershire. And I remember as a little girl in Worcestershire going to what was the county museum then, and they had a sugar loaf. Now, sugar loaves were, I don't know if you've ever heard of a sugar loaf before, but it was a way of describing it that everybody would understand. If you imagine a Coca-Cola bottle, right, a big bottle, not the curvy shaped ones, but a big bottle of lemonade or Coca-Cola, it was that shape with a pointy top and solid sugar. And then they had special, obviously came from where sugar came from, the Caribbean. And then the sugar would have been clipped off with special sugar cutters. And that's why sugar lumps were the way that sugar was put into drinks in that time in the UK. So you'd have special, so the sugar cutters would be silver, because only wealthy people could afford to have these sugar loaves. Whether the sugar loaves were made when the sugar got to Bristol or Liverpool or whatever, because Tate and Lyle sugar was big in Liverpool. So this is an area to explore as well. So the sugar loaves were then bought by people. People would have these silver sugar loaf cutters so that they could cut off the sugar. They would then have sugar tongs, tiny silver sugar tongs. Needless to say, my family have got silver sugar tongs. All coming together here. Nadia, welcome. It's lovely that you've joined us. We're just talking about...
Thank you very much. Nice to see you, Liz.
Good. We're just talking about some family history of mine that I'm discovering. So, and then they would have, with the tea set, there would always be, so you'd have your silver tea set and you'd also have your silver sugar base, and the sugar lumps went in, and they weren't cubes like are made nowadays. They would be just rough cut sugar off a sugar loaf. So from a child, I remember that. And close to my house, there was even a lane called Sugarloaf Lane. So it's so embedded into every lane, every village, every town. There was always something which was in some way linked with that enormous expansion of international trade that became the trade of the empire. Just so much. I mean, slates from around the world for roofing houses, roofing new public buildings, rather, probably public buildings, and slates for children to use in school. They all came from where I am here in North Wales at the moment. They all came from the quarries here. Slate is a rock that you can split very thin, and that was exported from Penryn Dock here. So there's so many ways that we can look at in Britain, appallingly. But today we've been hearing about Professor Fwatshak's wonderful and interesting project, where he's been looking at the ways that the project's called, this is to update you, Nadia, and remind me, it's called History from Below. And so the academic researchers have been talking to people from different ethnic groups in Plateau state in Nigeria, to ask them for their memories of their history, where their families came from, and what happened in the different phases of history, like the phase of colonial invasion and other things. So Professor Fwatshak, that's been absolutely wonderful. I don't know if you finished your lunch yet, Sati.
Yeah, I'm done. Thank you very much. I sometimes have to switch off because I'm in a public place. I'm very close to the road. So when vehicles are passing by, the noise sometimes is interfering, and I believe that you will be hearing distractions at the background of where I am.
Well,
Yeah. So yeah, but thank you also for sharing your family history. It's wonderful. I wish I could trace my own family like that. I was able to ask my dad about our family, but my family is so complicated that I'm not very sure of who I am because my dad told me his grandchildren, his grandparents up to the fifth. So I took Fwatshak from the fifth grandfather.
Oh.
That's not my father's name. That's the fifth grandfather, great grandfather that we have, and that's how far my dad could go. So we don't have a splendid history like you because we were village people moving from one place to another. But one interesting thing about my history as an individual is the fact that I was not even born in my village. My mom had very serious problems with infantile mortality. She lost 10 children before giving birth to me. So I was eventually birthed in a different location. So my history is so complicated, but yours is so straightforward, and I rejoice at your history. And I think you can write your family history and it will not have so many complications. But talking about Liverpool, that you mentioned, in history books, Liverpool is mentioned in connection with the slave trade, and is looked at as one of the major cities that evolved as a result of the slave trade. So when we're reading African history, Liverpool reminds us of the cities that emerged from the wombs of the slave trade. And when you mentioned Hamlet, what came to my mind was Shakespeare's Hamlet. So I was wondering whether your family is connected to the Hamlet written about by Shakespeare.
Well, I might explore that. But it's interesting that you say you come from a complex family. On the other side, these are only just two strands of my family history. But it's interesting because the Hamlets then married into the Woodhouse family. So it's this about keeping the wealth with the wealth on that side. But then I look at the other side, my father's family were extremely humble. They were millers here on the island of Anglesey, and they had a windmill, and they milled corn. But unfortunately, the windmill was burnt down, and I think something like 1920. So I never knew of the windmill. And my father lived in real poverty with his mother and the rest of his family. They were not well to do at all. The heyday of them owning mills and things passed by, but yet they were quite adventurous, and that's how my dad came to work in Ibadan in 1960.
Oh.
And my auntie Laura and Uncle Tom Cotsworth worked in the Niger Delta. He was involved in the early days in I suppose it was the 50s and 60s, with the oil trade there. So I've always known of Nigeria and always had a fascination. That's
So
funny that my family.
okay, you were not there with your dad as a child?
Yes, I went to Ibadan when I was 12. And I have the clearest memories, and I have some brilliant photographs. If you're interested, I'll show them one of the sessions, because it shows some of my father's. I've got some of my father's photographs that show the federal building, and there's not like that. I think there's a cyclist cycling past it, and I shared them on a Facebook page called Nigerian Nostalgia, I think, and there was
Hmm.
absolute hilarity because apparently it's a busy marketplace now, and you can't
Hmm.
get space on the pavement to put your sales pitch and all this kind of stuff. So I'll show you the version of Nigeria that my father shared with us in photographs. He was a keen photographer. And actually, it's interesting because if you live somewhere, you don't usually take pictures of it and don't have a record.
Yeah.
This snapshot of my father spending time in Nigeria for, he was only there about 15 months. And he travelled to Auchi, and we went to Port Harcourt, and
Oh,
That's where I grew up. I grew up in Port Harcourt.
oh, did you?
Port Harcourt.
Yes,
Yeah, Port Harcourt is a big place now.
Yeah.
Made every
It's-
effort to, introduce us to places. And I was just absolutely fascinated. And of course, Dad's bosses. Dad was Chief Technical Education Officer for the Western region. He'd been in further education.
Mhm.
And so his boss, this was just after independence, and it was part of a project where Britain was magnanimously sharing some skilled workers to help to train people
Oh.
to help take over the roles that were obviously essential for the development of the country. So Dad went over. It was the year when Yuri Gagarin had just been the first man in space. I remember that. We saw it. So yeah, so I just spent that time, and I always remember it. So Dad's bosses were all Black Nigerians. Everybody that we met, the shopkeepers and everybody, was Black Nigerians. And this little girl from a white village in the UK, well, that was a white village in the UK. And here I was in Nigeria. Well, I was in somebody else's country, which was run by all the local people, as it would be, and everybody was Black. So I didn't have ever have any question that was how the world was. So racism was just didn't occur to me as a child. These were just other people living in exciting other countries that had built cotton trees and calabash gourds and beautiful butterflies. Okay, Bunmi, you're having to leave. Well, I think we'll wrap this up now, but it's been the most delightful session. Sati, good luck with Monday. Good luck with the work that you're doing. Nadia,
Thank you.
we won't finish right away, but we'll just, so that you've got a chance to introduce yourself. Thank you, Sati, very much indeed.
Thank you very much for having me, and thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Nadia?
Yes, hi there. Oh, can you hear me? Sorry, I'm in the kitchen in a minute. So
Just introduce yourself.
why my video is on. Oh, hi everybody. I'm Nadia. I've not been on for ages, have I? There's been a lot going on in my life, sort of thing.
Oh, well.
Yes, but I'm here in Reading. I'm a member of the Jamaica Society and Friends in Reading. At the moment, I'm involved with the Windrush 75th anniversary. So we're organising an event for that, which will be on the 15th of July. We're having a service, a Thanksgiving and praise service, and also a meal, a 2-course meal, I think it will be, for about 250 people at the town hall here in Reading.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so that's what we're working on. It was interesting to hear your bit of your story that I heard, and also Sati's as well.
Yeah, that's
I
amazing.
myself, I was born in Jamaica,
Yeah.
in a place called Saint Catherine, in a little village. Really, back then it would be a really small place called Luida's Vale, which is really I suppose famous, so to speak, for the sugarcane plantation. There's a huge sugarcane plantation called Worthy Park in St Catherine, Luida's Vale, where most of my family worked back in the day, really. So yes, and I've been in England since I was 9 years old. That's me.
It's lovely that you joined us. Last week we had, I think it was last week, no, the week before, We had your colleague from the Reading, Jamaica,
Oh,
group,
Annette. Did you have Annette?
and we had somebody from the museum as well. So I'm really behind with posting all the recordings, but Simon's been marvelous at keeping the recordings. So we'll just do a whole set of the recordings of the Windrush stories that we looked at.
Oh, brilliant. Yes, I was at the launch last week, was it? And I actually gave an interview to Radio Berkshire also.
Oh, wonderful.
And Annette, who's our chairperson, she I think she's given some more interviews this week as well, so she'll probably be on the TV at some point with that. So there's a lot going on really with Windrush.
There is. Roland's just put a message in the chat because this is Roland from Justice for Windrush Generations.
Oh, brilliant.
He's saying that he's got his next compensation scheme international forum. Okay, so Eventbrite link. So I don't know if you can do a cut and paste on that. And
oh, I'd like to know more.
Yeah. Can you do that, or shall I email it to you?
If you could email it, that would be wonderful. Because I'm currently.
Give me your email address, because I.
Yeah, it's Akri Canon, which is AKRIC for Charlie ANON #1 @gmail.com.
Yeah, I've got that.
Yeah, you've got yeah, because I'm doing some of the interviews, actually, the Windrush interviews, but I'm interested to know more about the compensation scheme, actually, because initially I thought it was more for like my parents' generation, because my parents came in 1955 to the UK. Both of them have since passed away. But then now I'm getting to understand that some of the second and third generations can also apply to the scheme, although the scheme is apparently being disbanded, isn't it? Is it today, tomorrow?
I don't know the detail of it, and I don't know if Roland can speak at the moment. Roland, can you speak? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Roland.
I can speak, but I'm rushing out to an event. Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm rushing out to an event. It's going to be tomorrow. On Sunday, 3:30 p.m. at Brixton 70 Adventist Church. 3:30 p.m.
3:30 Brixton 70. Okay.
If you can't join physically, can't attend physically, then attend via Zoom. All the credentials are there. The links are there.
Brilliant.
Right. Zoom.
Okay, thank you. That'd be lovely.
Telephone numbers there as well. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay, thanks,
right,
Roland.
Got to rush now. Got to rush. I'm rushing out.
All right then.
Thanks.
That's great. I can't see the phone number, but I've copied in Roland and Garrick.
Okay.
And so if you just
I'll check the email.
Information, that'll be fine. Right, so I've done that email for you. That's good.
Thank you so much, Liz.
That's all right. So what I wanted to ask you, where are you having the church service?
It's at Reading Town Hall. Everything will be happening in the town hall. The service will take place there. And then following the service, then we'll have something to eat, a little bit of music, and just so people can sort of intermingle with each other, really.
Lovely.
So, and you're in Wales at the moment.
You're in Wales now. Yes, I'm back. I've been back about.
Are you back? Oh, when did you come back?
Mid-May. And if I looked out of the window here, if it wasn't such awful misty weather, I could see Penny Castle. So following up with our stories and everything. Yeah, it's been really good.
That's brilliant. Welcome back.
Thank you. But it's been fascinating to get back and to. I've done quite a bit with Garrick and Roland. I went to one of their sessions in London, which was brilliant, at the Houses of Parliament, one of the rallies. That was the first.
Yeah, that would have been good. Yeah.
That was really interesting to see. So we're just carrying on, and well, we've done a lot of stuff about Windrush over the last few weeks. So as people, get over so many activities, then you'll be able to reflect on some of those sessions again. But certainly, I mean, people are just learning so much more about it, and it's really, isn't it, really, really important. Oh, I'm pleased to have been able to chat with you anyway.
Thank you. Last week, was it last week? Or maybe, yeah, I think it was last week, beginning of last week. I went to a lovely choir, in honor of Windrush, a choir concert. And then we had a gentleman, I think his name was Vivian Richards. No, he's the cricketer. What's his name? Victor Richards.
Oh,
and
yes.
he did this one-man play about Windrush. It was amazing.
The streets paved with gold.
Yes.
He came and spoke the other day. He was really, well, a couple of weeks back. He was really interesting.
Very, very.
Oh, well, that's good. I'm going to wrap up now, though, Nadia, and we'll see you again soon. All right.
Okay, bless you. Thank you so much, and see you soon.
Thanks,
Bye for now.
Bye.